Hi everyone, it's Robin here from the Dance Physio. I'm here today to talk to you about hamstring flexibility. Now everybody always wants to know how to improve their hamstring flexibility. It's perhaps one of the most common questions that I think any performing arts physio gets asked. So there are a few lucky people out there that can just keep stretching and their hamstrings just gradually get better and better. But for the vast majority of us, especially if you've come into flexibility training as an adult, will find that you hit a plateau if you just keep stretching and don't do anything else. So I've got for you today 4 of my favorite exercises to help you push past that flexibility plateau and to keep progressing and to reach your hamstring flexibility goals. Now, before we get started, it's important to understand a little bit about the science behind flexibility training. This will help you to understand why you're struggling to progress and what you can do to help get better. Now, flexibility is controlled by our neurological system. So it's not about how long your muscles are, but it's about how long your nerves and your nervous system will allow your muscle to stretch. When you feel a stretch, what you're feeling is your body triggering a minor contraction in the muscle to keep you from going any farther. Now, this is designed as a protective mechanism. Our bodies are actually all about self-preservation and injury prevention. So when you feel a stretch, it's your body triggering that response to stop you from going any farther and potentially injuring yourself. So what we need to look at when you've reached a plateau, it's about how to convince your nervous system that it's safe to go that little bit farther. So when we're looking to improve flexibility, to convince your body that it's safe to go a little bit farther, we need to look at 4 main elements. Number 1 is something that we call end range strength. So that's strength in the muscle that you're trying to stretch when it's as long as your body will already let it go. So when you get to the end of your range of motion, you want to strengthen that muscle there at the end of the range of motion so that your body thinks it's got the strength to cope with that position. The second element we look at is strength in what we call the antagonist. So that's the opposite muscle group. Now, this is important because of a phenomenon that we call reciprocal inhibition. So that means as your opposite muscle contracts, the muscle that you're trying to stretch will then relax. This is how your body moves into different ranges of motion. So in this case, you want to improve the flexibility in your hamstrings. You need to improve the strength in the quad muscles. They're the opposite group. Thing that's really important for improving your flexibility is strength in the muscle and strength through the whole range of movement in the muscle. Now, a lot of dancers, performing artists, even people in the wider fitness community believe that if you improve the strength in your muscle, you're going to make it less flexible. And actually, this view is completely false. One of the best ways that you can improve the flexibility in your muscle is to get it stronger. This allows the nervous system to start to accept that that muscle has the strength to control and support a bigger and bigger range of motion. Now, the 4th element we're going to talk about is what we call neural tension. Now, our nerves are a bit like electrical wiring. You've got a sheath on the outside and then the nerve runs through the middle. Now, when you're stretching, the nerve should glide and slide through the soft tissues, through the muscles. But what can happen sometimes is you can get a little bit sticky. So the nerves can get sticky inside the sheath, which will stop them from gliding and sliding. The whole nerve itself can get a little bit stuck to the muscles and the soft tissues. Now, if your nerves can't glide and slide freely like they should, then you're going to struggle with your flexibility. So, of course, I've got 4 exercises for you today, one to address each of these principles. So the first exercise I've got for you today is an exercise to really focus on the strength in your hamstring muscles, and importantly, the strength through the full range of motion that you've already got. Now, for this exercise, I've got a couple of dumbbells. Now, if you don't have dumbbells, don't panic. Just look around your house and find something heavy. No doubt you'll be able to find something you can use. You can even just use a backpack that's loaded down with books and you can hug it to your chest. Now, this exercise is what we call a straight-legged deadlift. It works your hamstring muscles, and very importantly, it works the active flexibility in your hamstring muscles, but it also works the muscles in your lower back. It works your Antagonist muscles. It works your core muscles as well. It's an all-around really great exercise for dancers. Now, you need to do as many as you can to actually fatigue the muscles, because that's how they'll then get stronger. So I usually recommend people will start with about 10 of them. And then as you get stronger, you can either do more of them, building up to being able to do about 15 to 18, or you can grab yourself some heavier weights. Now, really importantly with this exercise is what we call an eccentric exercise. So that's strengthening the muscle as it lengthens. Now, these exercises, eccentric exercises, are very prone to causing what we call delayed onset muscle soreness. So that's the feeling of you feel great when you're doing the exercise, feel like you've worked the muscle really hard, and then the next day you wake up and you can't move. So that's why with this exercise, it's really important to start a little bit cautiously. Once the muscles get really tired, stop. Don't push past tired. And then you also don't need to do this exercise too often. You want to think about doing this exercise to start with maybe 2 or 3 times a week, and give yourself some rest days in between. Now, when you start this exercise, if you do feel that delayed onset muscle soreness, so if you wake up the next day and the muscle feels actually more stiff, more sore, don't panic. That's just the muscle getting stronger. And as the muscle gets stronger, that post-exercise soreness will naturally settle. And in the long run, you'll have better, more flexible hamstrings. So not only will they be more flexible, but as an added bonus, they'll be less injury prone because it's strong. So before you grab your weights, it's really important that we understand this movement. It's really important that you do this exercise with really good form. So what you need for this exercise is to keep it strong and to keep it active the whole time. This is never entering the zones of passive stretching. Always an active movement. And what you need to keep throughout is a really flat back. So I like dancers to start by having one hand on the small of your back, one hand on your tummy, and then keeping your knees pulled up, keeping your legs straight. You're going to hinge from the waist to make a flat back. Now, what you should be able to feel with your hands here and here is that you don't want any curving to happen. So as soon as you feel some curving, that's your end point. So what will happen is you'll naturally be able to go right to the end of your hamstring range. But once you reach the end range of your hamstrings, your back will want to start to curve. And that's wrong. So everybody just have a little practice before we grab the weights, keeping your legs nice and straight, your knees pulled up, pulling up your tummy muscles, and hinge from the waist. That's it. Once you've mastered that, grab your weights. And we do the same movement, but with that added resistance. So hinging from the waist, reaching the end of your hamstring range of motion, and coming back up. Keep this nice and slow and controlled the whole time. So slowly bending forward, hinging from your waist, and coming back up. So the second exercise we're looking at is what we call that end range strength. So for this exercise, we're going to do what we call an isometric end range contraction. Now, isometric is a fancy word for a push and hold. So you're going to contract that muscle in a sustained manner, so that's the push, at the end of your range of motion that you've already got. And then you gradually work on building up the flexibility so that that end range is that little bit farther. So for this exercise, my favorite way to do this exercise is with a big yoga ball. So if you've got a yoga ball, great. If you don't have a yoga ball, you can also do this by getting your leg up onto a door frame. So with the ball against the wall or with your foot against the door frame, you shuffle your bottom forward until your hamstring is at the max range of motion that it can get. Then, in this position, you push against the ball or the door frame as hard as you can. So you really want to imagine that you're pushing the ball right through the wall, or you're trying to send yourself the other direction. And you should feel your hamstring contract. Then you want to hold that for about 30 seconds. Relax, and then you want to do another 30 seconds. So pushing and holding as hard as you can. Now, if you've already got really good flexibility with your hamstrings, but you're trying to push them that bit farther, you might find you want to progress this end range isometric hold to using a towel. But I would recommend you make sure you can get well past 90 degrees before you try doing it with the towel, because otherwise it becomes too much of an arm workout and not a hamstring workout. So what you do for this version is you wrap a towel around your foot and you bring yourself to your end of range. Then you push into the towel, push as hard as you can for 30 seconds, relax, and then you're going to do that push again. So pushing and holding as hard as you can for 30 seconds at your end range. Now, really importantly with this version though, it's very tempting for dancers to let this turn into a passive stretch. This is not a passive stretch, it's your active end range contraction. So the next exercise I've got for you is one to build the strength in the antagonist muscles. So in this case, as we talked about before, this is strength in your quads and your hip flexors. So building strength in these muscles and contracting these muscles will then help your hamstrings to be able to lengthen and relax. So for this exercise, you want to sit with your legs long in front of you. Now, really importantly for this exercise, you need to sit really tall and upright. So you lift up through your core muscles, lift up through your back. Now, if you've never done this exercise before, you can use your hands to help you a little bit. But as soon as you've been doing this exercise for a while, you need to get your hands up off the ground. So pulling up your knees, straighten your knees, lifting up through your core. You're going to lift one leg off the ground, hold for 3, 2, 1, and lower. So again, pulling up, lift your leg, 3, 2, 1, and lower. Now, really importantly with this exercise, you don't collapse in the middle. You need to stay upright. Now, this is quite a challenging exercise for your quads and your hip flexors. So to start with, you might be only lifting half an inch. You might also only manage kind of 6 to 8 repetitions before your leg feels like a lead weight. And that's all right. Once you get stronger, you can lift your leg that little bit higher and you can build up to where you're able to do about 10 to 12 repetitions on each leg. Now, as a bonus, this exercise is also really great for improving your développés and extensions. So by practicing this exercise, you're going to help your hamstring flexibility, but you're also going to help improve your extensions. Now, the last exercise we're going to look at is one for your neural flexibility or your neural tension. So in this case, we're dealing with flexibility and mobility in the sciatic nerve. The sciatic nerve runs from the base of your spine, through your glutes, down the back of your leg, all the way down to your toes, more or less. Now, this nerve needs to be able to glide and slide as you move through your range of motion. If it gets stuck anywhere along the way, you're going to feel a real pull, and that's going to limit your flexibility. So a really quick test to know whether neural tension is a problem for you. What you want to do, sit with your legs long in front of you. And what you need to do is a forward bend as much as you can. You want to do this first with your toes pointed, and then you're going to repeat your forward bend with your feet flexed. Now, if there's a big difference in the pull with your feet flexed and with your feet pointed, you'll know that that's your sciatic nerve that's getting pulled. So there are lots of different ways you can work on improving the mobility in your sciatic nerve. I'm going to show you one of my favorite versions for dancers. Now, this is really good because it's safe and effective for most people, but it also works on a little bit of a dynamic stretch in your hamstrings, which is going to help, and it also gives you a little bit of strengthening through your quad muscles, which again is going to help. So for this one, you lie on your back, pull your knee into your chest as much as you can. Keep your foot pointed to start with, so toes pointed to start with. Straighten your knee as much as you can so you just feel a gentle stretch. Flex your toes and bend your knees. So again, point your toes, straighten your knee, flex your foot, and bend your knee. So toes, knee, toes, knee. Now with this one, you don't need to straighten your knee all the way. If you can't get your knee straight all the way yet, don't worry. That will come as you practice this exercise more. Also, when you flex your foot, you don't want to feel a really painful pull. This should be quite gentle. So if it does start to feel really painful when you pull your toes back, just let that knee bend a little bit more as you flex your foot. So if you need to, slight bend in your knee, let that knee bend a little bit as you flex and bring it down. Now with this exercise, neural flossing exercises are slow, controlled, continuous movements. Again, this is never hanging out at the end of the range. This is not a passive stretch. Keep it nice and fluid and controlled. Also, when you're doing any kind of neuromobility exercise, as I touched on a minute ago, it should not be painful. Nerves do not like to be yanked and pulled. If you start yanking and pulling the nerve, you can actually irritate it and leave yourself with what we call latent pain, which would just be discomfort later. So as you bend your, as you straighten your leg and flex your toe, if you need to bend your knee to keep the real yank and pull off your sciatic nerve, make sure you do that. Then as the nerve gets more mobile, you'll be able to straighten your knee more, you'll be able to flex your foot more. So you want to do neural flossing exercises somewhere around 12 to 15 times each leg, and look at doing it about 2 or 3 times a week. So there we go. There's 4 of my favorite exercises to help you push through a hamstring flexibility plateau. If you've got any questions about any of the exercises, be sure to leave a comment below or send me a message. As always, it's really important that you know what you're doing with the exercises and that you feel safe and confident doing with them. So send me a message if you've got any concerns, and I'll help talk you through what's going wrong. Also, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can stay up to date with my latest flexibility and dance training tips.